appreciate all of these breaks we have built into our agenda today. It makes it much easier for me to focus. I don't know about the rest of you.
Much.
And I appreciate that everyone keeps on coming back to the table in time. That helps those happen. So we are, yesterday we heard about sort of the fee report broadly. We're going to hear from the Secretary of State's office specifically today. So if you want to come join us.
Thank you.
And have you been in yet?
I haven't. This is my first time this year.
Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you. I imagine we'll probably spend some time with you in the future. I know there's a few compacts that are rumored to be coming through.
Yes.
So let's do a little round of introductions.
Great. Thank you.
So I'm Emily Kornheiser, Chair of the committee.
Bill Canfield.
Hi, I'm Julia Andrews.
Jim Massland. Scott Beck.
Kirk Taylor.
Peter Anthony.
Carolyn Brannigan.
Carol Emdy.
Carl Demerol.
Nice to see you all. I'm Lauren Hibbert. I'm the Deputy Secretary of State, and I'm so thankful for all of your time today. I did file some testimony, and I hear that you guys can follow along on your independent devices. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our fees on a high level. Even before I get into it, we have a need for a fee bill this year, and I appreciate this committee's openness to talking about it. So thank you. So the Secretary of State is a special fund agency. We have two funds that operate in our agency. We have a total budget of approximately $17.7 million. That was this year's fiscal budget. Our two funds are the Secretary of State Service Fund and then the Professional Regulatory Fund. We also do receive money from HAVA, which is the Help America Vote Act, that's administered to us through the EAC, which is the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. We receive substantial funds from that grant program to help support our elections work. So ballot printing, voter outreach, that funding is anticipated to come to us again. But that's federal money that comes through omnibus bills or election-specific bills on the federal government side. There was one that just reallocated money to HAVA, and we're in the process of obtaining the funds through the HAVA administration to get that grant money. An important piece related to HAVA is that at this moment, we don't know exactly how much money we're going to get from the federal government. And it does underpin a lot of our elections work and support our budget significantly. The Secretary of State Services Fund, which is 21928, was created by statute, and it receives all the revenue from the Corporations Division and revenues received from reference research activities and authentication fees at the SARA. These revenues are approximately 7.98 million over the past 5 years, if you look at the trajectory. And the funds are responsible for funding all general operations, staff costs, and all operating expenditures for the following divisions. The elections division's work that's not eligible for the grant funding, the administration of the Secretary of State's office, SARA, which is the Vermont State Records and Archives Administration, the Business Services Division, which is the Corporations Division, and our Information and Technology unit. In comparison, our expenditures during that same 5-year period have averaged around 5.3. So we have been operating in the positive in this fund. And historically, finance and management has swept approximately 1.5 to 2 million per year, depending on where the fund is on any given year. The fund is currently stable. We have requested that the administration not sweep funds into the general fund this year, in large part because we have some planned IT expenditures that we have known about for many years. We need to go out to a new RFP and IT procurement for the election system. And we also need to go out for procurement for a new corporation system. Both of those systems are at the end of their lifespan, about 10 years old. And it's time to re-engage with the vendor and get the next iteration of services that Vermonters expect and deserve. So we also a little bit concerning about this fund is once we go out to procurement, we know that there will be maintenance and ongoing support required for that fund. And you'll see a theme, we're very cognizant that our staff costs are going to increase over time, year after year. And we're concerned about this fund not having, without additional revenue being generated, we're concerned about its ability to sustain itself on an annual basis, particularly with the open question of how much HAVA funds will we be getting. So we'll feel more confident in the stability of the fund once HAVA money is more clear.
This is the Secretary of State Service Fund we're talking about?
Yes. We are looking for potential fee adjustments in that fund, specifically the corporation's filings. We're currently reviewing when the fees were last updated. I believe that was in 2015, and the fees in the surrounding states. We plan to make a recommendation the next time we have an opportunity to testify, if we're invited back, to talk about what our recommendations are. And again, we really want to look at what is in comparison with other New England states or other states with similar filing volumes. We're not exactly equivalent to Massachusetts, so we're going to be looking at other small states as well. And then we would be looking for recommendations that would put us in the median of the New England states. So although we may compare ourselves to Alaska in terms of the filing fees because of our volume, we would be looking more to make sure that we were not putting corporations locally in a position where they would have to choose between Vermont and Massachusetts, if that makes sense. The professional regulatory fee fund is likely the biggest driver of why I'm here. That is Fund 21-150. That is also created by statute. And this fund is a complicated fund, and I look forward to walking through it with all of you. It has many iterations of complication. One of them, probably the biggest, is that we renew our licenses on a biannual cycle. So we do, our revenue is not consistent year after year in each specific profession. So you'll see that as we start to walk through. The Office of Professional Regulation is fundamentally responsible for regulating 81,000 licensees at this moment. We regulate 51 professions. We are always striving to regulate in the right size for the profession. And part of the constraints of this fund are that the statute is written so that we do not share revenue between professions. And with that biennial cycle is the other sometimes confuddling piece of the puzzle of this fund. It's siloed. The OPR fund does not share any funds with the Secretary of State Special Fund. And the average revenues that have been deposited are 6.1 million over the past 5 years, but there are our lean years and our more fruitful years. And in comparison, our expenditures have averaged 7.3. And I look forward to talking about our expenditures in that same time period. You will see as we go further down in the presentation that this fund has had a surplus in it at different points in time, and that we began work in 2017 on our next generation licensing platform program. We call it NGLP in 2017, and you will see that is the beginning of the decline in our revenue in that fund. We did not ask for an IT allocation when we started that IT project. because it was assumed that the surplus in the fund would adequately cover the costs of building the system. Unfortunately, as IT projects go, that just hasn't been the case. And work and expenditures are still ongoing. So I look forward to talking about where we are in the system and what is the source of those expenditures if you want to dive into it. But every day we're getting closer to when we think we'll be able to really reduce our IT spend. But there's still work to do before we can get there. And I am very confident that this was the right IT solution for our office. We have been able to expedite licenses. As a result of this, we've dramatically reduced paper and our reliance on the mail system. So just anecdotally, before we had the system, if somebody mailed us in an application, we would have to, if there was something that we needed clarification on in their application, we would have to mail them a letter. They would have to mail us back a letter. And then we would mail them back a letter. and so that introduced 3 weeks right there. And now we are able to message somebody in the system, I need you to update your application. This is why you're deficient. And we really almost have, for right or wrong, almost like a live chat with applicants who are applying for a license. And it's been really helpful. And if you look at our licensing times, we have been able to cut back how long it takes us to issue a license. So the majority of our nursing licenses today are issued within 45 minutes, which is amazing. And I'm very proud of. I'm proud of our team as well. It's not just the system, it's the team who's diligently watching those applications come in, prioritizing those applications because we understand the workforce shortage and making that happen. But even if we removed the work.
Lots of people are making very impressed faces around the table. So I want to make sure that you see that in the midst of your presentation. Yes.
It is something that we should be very proud of in Vermont. And certainly as an office, we're very proud of it. There's always room for more streamlining and application process. We are reliant on receiving documents from third parties, exam scores, transcripts, verifications from other states. Those are the primary reasons why our applications get slowed down. And we're in the process of implementing. Last year, we created a provisional license where we can issue a license while we're waiting for verifications or criminal background check, which are the two things that take the longest time. We're in the process of implementing those across all of our professions. They're currently in our nursing professions because, as you may have heard from your constituents, nurses are needing to get fingerprint background checked for the first time ever in Vermont this renewal cycle. And there is a backlog in criminal background checks. So we're doing our best to mitigate the harm for those nurses and to get people working as quickly as possible. So in talking about the system, the last point on this slide that I just wanted to make is even if we removed the work of the contractor from our budget, we would be essentially flat. And that does not anticipate staff costs growth. And we will have to do maintenance on the system. So we are just at a pain point in the OPR fund, and I can show you a graph related to that in a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we allocate the budget to professions. We have 16 board professions. Those are the board model. And in that model, the licensing funds are siloed and can only be used to support that profession. So nursing funds come in through applications and renewals. We put them into the nursing budget, and that money cannot be transferred to the pharmacy budget or to the veterinary budget. We also have the advisor model. In that model, the licensing funds are pooled between the professions. The majority of our professions are in the advisor model, and those fees are used to support each other. So the social work fees and the barber and cosmetology fees and the funeral fees are all pooled into one pool. There are benefits to the advisor model. There are benefits to the board model. But from a fee structure, the advisor model allows for more social, equitable contemplation of fees based on income potential in a profession.
Just before you, Representative Anthony, just a public service announcement for folks who might be in the building for the first time. You are welcome to come and go as you please. Once you sit down in the meeting, you don't have to wait until a break if you want to remove yourself from the meeting. It's a open door policy around here. Representative Anthony.
Thank you. Deputy Hibbert, I'm aware of the difference between board and that has the silos for revenue and expenditures and the advisor model, as you call it, registration. Which one, if you will, notwithstanding the IT initiative, is generating the shortfall, would you say? Or can you speak to that? Because obviously the silos matter and that's why they're in statute.
So I had not planned to get to that level of detail today, but I can touch on it. So some of our boards are very healthy and some of our boards are in a bit of a crisis. Boards that immediately come to mind are nursing, architects, and land surveyors are at a significant budget default or decline, deficit. Yes, default's the wrong word. And some of those, the rationale for some of that is explainable. Mainly in architects, their fee hasn't been raised in a very, very long time. In nursing, we anticipated that there would be a budget fallout when we implemented the nurse licensure compact. And for those of you who haven't heard me talk about the nurse licensure compact, it is a very good state policy for us to be part of the nurse licensure compact. And it has a budget impact for us because what the nurse licensure compact does is it allows a nurse who's a resident of a compact state, not ours, work in our state without obtaining a license. And before we entered the compact, that nurse had to obtain a license from us. So we received that $190 from that nurse that we no longer receive. So we lost, we're still in the middle of really assessing what our loss is because this is our first renewal while we've been part of the compact. The renewal closes on March 31st, but we're projecting that we're losing about 1/3 of our licensees as a result of that. And that is absolutely hurting our bottom line in nursing.
Because I have some history of that, I just want my colleagues to know the tension is between being competitive in terms of the renewal rate, being a member of the compact and losing some, if you will, exclusive, if you will, revenue.
And I believe Lauren will get into that as we go along. And we're going to have, I think, the opportunity to talk about a few more compacts as we go through the session.
Yeah, I mean, compacts are a beautiful solution to cross-state mobility. And it is, while I don't personally believe that people think to themselves, I'm not going to move to Vermont because the licensure fee is too high. I think there's many other factors that dissuade someone or give someone pause about moving to Vermont and excitement about moving to Vermont. More people should move to Vermont. I don't want to sound like, I don't want to be on the record of saying don't move to Vermont.
It's a hard day for the record around here.
Yeah, I know. Just thought I'd make that clear. Sorry.
The traveling nurses have complicated this issue.
So the traveling nurses have always been part of the picture of the nurse workforce in Vermont. We are, to my knowledge, using travelers more than we have historically, but they've always been a piece. And I think we're not out of step with how other states are using travelers. But traveling nurses are a piece because, from a fee revenue perspective, because we used to receive a licensure fee for every traveling nurse. And now, because so many states are part of the nurse licensure compact, I think it's at 37 or maybe 40. I should refresh my memory on that. We are not receiving fees from those traveling nurses, and that does affect our bottom line dramatically. Yeah. So we have those two models for how we regulate the professions and how we isolate the fees by profession if it's a board model, and how we combine the fees if it's an advisor model. And then we have two types of expenses that I just think are relevant to the conversation. We have direct expenses, which are per diems for our board members, and our enforcement costs. Our enforcement costs are the staff costs, the vehicle cost, the space cost of our enforcement unit, which includes 9 investigators, 5 of which are certified law enforcement, and 4 prosecutors, 2 case managers, and our admin services for that division. So those expenses are directly billed to the professions. So we receive approximately 600 complaints a year. We divide the costs of that unit by 600, and we allocate that to professions or the advisor pool. The indirect expenses are our staff, out excluding enforcement, our administrative law officers who we hire on contract to oversee our hearings, our rent, dues, office supplies, and our IT system. These expenses are allocated to the profession based on the number of licensees in the program, in each profession. So nurses is approximately 26,000 licensees on whole. That's APRNs, RNs, LNAs, and APRNs, RNs, LPNs, and LNAs. And we allocate that to that board. You know, we take the total of the indirect expenses, divide it by 181,000, and then allocate the expense based on the number of licensees in each program. I just befuddled myself. So was everyone with me in that explanation? Because it is a bit complicated.
Yeah.
You said rent,
Yes.
so that's another building, and not where your office is, but there's another office building
Yes. So
you have folks at.
yeah, we have a space at 89 Main Street. We've been there since approximately a year after Hurricane Irene. We had made a large effort to consolidate ourselves up at National Life. The Office of Professional Regulation was consolidated up at National Life. And after Irene, we got displaced. And we were in a temporary space, and then at 89 Main Street, which is the building above Skinny Pancake and Artisan's Hand. Rent is a piece of our cost. It's my understanding that we pay second highest rent in lease space in the state. We were in a situation where we were.
Of state government.
Of state government, yes, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Very good clarification for the record, yes, of state government. And we were in a situation where we needed a space, and that was the space that was available. We're coming to the close of our lease, which is ending in July 1st of this year. And we are in active conversations with BGS about how to reduce our space costs either in that location or another location. Okay. This is a snapshot of the OPR fund balance. You can just see that in 2017, we were at 3.5 approximately, and now we're in negative 1.5 and projected to go lower. Again, this is another visualization of our costs. Our largest expenses are our staff, which are, I would assert to this committee and to anyone else who asked, our staff are our most valuable resource. I never would want to suggest that that our budget should come at the sacrifice of our staff, because the only way we're able to provide the excellent service that we have a track record of doing and we are committed to continuing to do is through our staff. Our second largest expense is our IT system, and then next largest is our rent. We have had increasing costs. COVID and the related unfunded mandates related to COVID, which again, were very good policy decisions. And just for those of you who have not heard me talk about this before, during COVID, we were issuing emergency licenses for people who could not take an exam because they couldn't schedule an exam. So just for an example of the complication of that, we had to create 51, well, really, we license 163 different license types. So we have 51 programs, but 163 different license types. So we had to create an emergency license across all of those license types in our IT system to allow someone to get licensed on an emergency basis while they were waiting for an exam. So our IT costs went up dramatically in March of 2020 and extended through really August of 2020 until we were trying to prioritize which programs to do first and to make sure that we were getting people who were graduating in the spring of 2020 working as quickly as possible. We did receive a one-time allocation of 1.35 last legislative session. We are very grateful for that allocation, but in our assessment, we don't think that it's totally offset our expenditures. And the other piece that's happened in some of our professions, but not in all, is we've lost licensees in the course of COVID. Some professionals decided not to go back to working and subsequently not renew their licenses. In some professions, we had an increase of licensees. For instance, in real estate, we had an increase in licensees because of the real estate market boom. We also have had rising regulatory demands. We have made a very concerted effort to reduce regulatory barriers and to make process improvements. We did that with the support of a federal grant, which is now done. But that also has increased our IT costs to an extent. And we don't want to stop innovating or stop meeting our customers' needs just because of our budget expenses. And then just because our costs that we can control are increasing, that's staff, IT, and rent. And we can tell that inflation is a factor. Fee updates have been irregular. Our last one was in 2019, which was pre-COVID. Our prior significant updates occurred in 2006, and 1997. Ideally, we would be on a regular basis where we were coming in front of the legislature to talk about fees. And in fact, in 2019, that was the first year that I did a fee bill as director of the Office of Professional Regulation. And I testified in every committee I'm coming back in 2021 because it was so painful to not have come back on many of the professions on a consistent basis. And we just couldn't make it in. The legislature had multiple priorities, and also there was not a fee bill vehicle for us to move our agenda down. So we hope that the legislature will consistently look at fees because it really helps an agency like ours that's operating as close to the line as we can. And particularly for the OPR fund, we do not regularly receive general fund money. And so we don't have the opportunity to sort of do some cost allocation because we don't have any general fund source. So the graph on this slide is really the value of money of $100 in different years. So if a fee was set in 1997, it would be equivalent to $184 today. If a fee was set as $100 in 2006, it would be $147, 2017, $120, and 2019, $115. So you could.
What are you on?
I'm on slide 11, page 11.
Okay, got it.
you can see if we've been operating on fees that haven't been modified since 1997, the impact that has on us for general operations. So I am really looking forward to the fee adjustment discussion. Our general principles have always been that, and our concept for coming in here in the next iteration of conversation is to adjust renewal and application fees to correct for inflation and to stabilize our fund balance by profession or the advisor pool. We want to have a sensitive approach for healthcare professions in particular. As soon as we start to talk about fees for healthcare professions, you will hear from constituents about this. It is 100% true that they have been through a really challenging time. And we need to be sensitive to that. And we also want to align profession types wherever possible so that we are thinking about fees as being equivalent across similar profession types and earning capabilities. And then the last piece of my testimony is a one-pager, which is basically a denser version of what I just talked about. But I thought it might be helpful to have the one-pager if you are looking for some nighttime reading or a tighter snapshot of what I just talked about. But I wanted to walk through it a bit more slowly than that snapshot as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about OPR or our fund balance.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know that fee bill, having heard fee bills before, it always goes over better if we can present, along with fee increases, some fees that get eliminated and some fees that get reduced, so that it really truly is a fee adjustment bill, not just a fee increase. And I understand, I really do understand everything you've told us about how you're struggling now for 5 years with no fees, no fee increases. I don't know how you're doing it, but I know that it's difficult, but I just want to say that it will be difficult on the floor also, and with our constituency,
Yes.
if they're all fee increases.
I will work with the team and look for fee decreases that we can make. And I hear your point. And I think in 2019, we did have some fee decreases and fee increases.
Yeah, there always were.
Yeah.
Somehow, Chris Winters did it back then.
Yes.
I worked with him several years in a row. And then there were, and I don't know if we're doing a fee bill this year. I want to say that again to you. But the boards that are in control of these, like the funeral director boards and the dental boards, I remember them, but I can't remember where they are in the grouping. But if they are in favor of whatever adjustment, that helps too.
Yes.
Because they can reach out and do some working with their people.
Yes.
What will that process look like for you?
For me, I am going to email our board members and our advisors probably by the close of tomorrow with this presentation that I've just made to you, and also with a proposal of adjustments. And I will be going to each board meeting and talking about their specific fund and the specific adjustments that we would be with.
So some of these professions have gone to advisory. Is there still a board that you would contact?
So with the advisory model, we have all of the advisors in one listserv, for lack of a better word. And so I will be communicating with all of them about the fees as well. I don't anticipate that I will meet with each advisor individually, but if there's a group that's particularly upset, I obviously would meet with them or talk with them.
Funeral directors.
Funeral directors are part of the advisor pool. So I will be emailing the funeral advisors. We converted them from a board to an advisor model in large part because their deficit was they could not get out of the hole in their siloed budget. And we made that move in 2018, I believe, 2018. And they are now part of the advisor pool.
I do have sort of curiosity about ways to think about the challenge of those professions where a siloed budget might not be appropriately able to cover itself, but it's also a profession that is very much strengthened by having a board rather than be part of the advisor pool, and just sort of continuing to like brainstorm about what we can do about that. I'm sure you spend a lot of time thinking about that, and they don't need my thinking on it, but.
No, I do.
Have that conversation.
I would love to have your thinking on it, Madam Chair, because it is complicated. We do not want to make all of our professions advisor professions. We need to have our disciplinary hearings in nursing in front of a nursing board. We need those subject matter experts as jurors. It's very similar for dental or pharmacy. I could make the argument for almost all of our boards. And it does create a budget issue for us. And I would love to think creatively and look at how other states are solving this. And there is an element of public good in what we do that is not supported by the general fund. And I don't know whether that is possible to shift or if there's a creative way to receive some support from the general fund. But at a minimum, I'd like to think about the siloing of fees among professions while keeping the board model and try and think creatively about that.
Yeah, I was second to that. So that's a good point. So if we were to just do away with all fees and give you a lump sum out of the general fund, would it be 6 million or 7 million?
I think it would need to be 7 million.
7 million a year.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to evaluate it every year.
Yes, that's right. That would be an approach, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it sounds like you've done some work that, you didn't detail out in this presentation about what fees would be adjusted. And I'm curious, it seems like there's a bit of volatility in your budget with the office rent situation and then also your large IT project, which I'm assuming is coming to an end at some point in the relatively near future. So I'm just sort of curious, as you're building this fee structure, it sounds like you might have a budget that might reduce in size in the future because of those things. And is that what you're planning for, or are you planning for the budget you have right now? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. We are planning for our budget in the future. So we are projecting with our reduced costs. Just to clarify, we will not be done with our IT spend entirely. That's not going to go, that orange triangle is not going to go away, but it can be reduced by some. And, but yes, we're trying to reduce the IT spend and the rent spend as best we can. And we are projecting that out based on what we're hoping to do in the future. And the fees are based on that projection.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any? Okay. Thank you so much for starting this conversation with us.
Thank you.
Would love to have you come back once you have those conversations with the advisories.
I should be ready to do that early next week. So if you want to get me back on the schedule, I'm ready and willing.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in, and congratulations on your new position.
Oh, thank you.
So we are back here at 1:15 to talk about the transportation fund.